I stared at my laptop screen, the bright red notification glaring back at me. Tuition payment deadline 3 days. My roommate had just celebrated getting her payment confirmation, but my account still showed that dreaded outstanding balance. The knot in my stomach tightened as I closed the laptop. I had always trusted my parents to handle these things. They had never let me worry about finances before. Walking down the hallway toward the stairs, I felt confident this was just an oversight. After all, they had always taken care of everything for both Sophia and me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever felt overlooked in your own family. This story is about to take a turn that changed everything. Growing up in our comfortable suburban home in Austin, Texas, I thought our family was perfectly normal. My parents, both working professionals, had built a solid middle-class life for us. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm, while Mom managed operations at a medical office. Sophia, my younger sister by 2 years, and I had never wanted for anything essential. We both attended the same state university, with me studying business administration and Sophia pursuing her pre-med track. Our relationship had always seemed typical of sisters, close in age, competitive sometimes, but generally supportive. I descended the stairs that Tuesday afternoon, finding my parents in their usual spots. Mom sat at the kitchen counter with her laptop managing household bills, while Dad relaxed in his recliner reading the local newspaper. The scene felt familiar and safe, exactly what I needed before bringing up what I assumed was a simple clerical issue. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something." I began settling onto the couch across from them. "I got a notification about my tuition payment today. The deadline is Friday, but I do not see it processed yet." Dad glanced up briefly from his paper but said nothing, returning his attention to the sports section. Mom continued typing on her laptop without looking up. "We are handling it," she said curtly, her tone carrying an edge I had never heard before. "Okay, but when exactly will it be paid?" I pressed gently. "My roommate just got her confirmation and I am starting to worry about the deadline." "Rosalie, we said we are handling it." Mom finally looked at me, her expression showing clear irritation. "Why are you being so pushy about this?" The word pushy hit me strangely. I had never been called pushy for asking about something as important as my education. Dad remained silent behind his newspaper, offering no support or clarification. The atmosphere in the room felt different, charged with a tension I could not understand. "I am not trying to be pushy," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I just want to make sure everything is okay. The late fees are pretty substantial if we miss the deadline." "Do you think we do not know how to manage our own finances?" Mom snapped her laptop screen, reflecting the harsh light as she turned to face me fully. "We have been paying for your education for 3 years. We know what we are doing." Something about her tone made my chest tighten. This was not how conversations about practical matters usually went in our household. I nodded slowly and headed back upstairs, telling myself I was overthinking things. Maybe they were just stressed about something else. But as I walked past Sophia's room, her door slightly ajar, I heard her voice bright with excitement on a phone call. "Oh my gosh, yes, my parents just paid my whole semester. I am so relieved. I was worried about the deadline, but they took care of everything today." I stopped walking, my hand frozen on the stair railing. Sophia's tuition had been paid today. Today, while my parents were telling me they were handling mine. The hallway suddenly felt colder, and I found myself straining to hear more of her conversation. I know, right? They are so good about staying on top of these things. I never have to worry about deadlines because they always pay early. Sophia continued, her voice carrying easily through the thin walls. My legs felt weak as I continued to my room. I immediately opened my laptop and logged into my student account, then navigated to Sophia's public payment status through the family portal our parents had set up years ago. There it was clear as day: spring semester tuition paid in full. The timestamp showed the payment had been processed at 2:15 this afternoon, just 3 hours before our conversation downstairs. I checked my own account again, hoping I had missed something earlier. Outstanding balance $8,457. I sat on my bed for several minutes trying to process what this meant. Why would they pay Sophia's tuition immediately while leaving mine pending with just 3 days remaining? Maybe there was a logical explanation I was missing. Gathering my courage, I walked back downstairs. This time I needed a real answer, not dismissive responses. "Mom," I said, standing in the kitchen doorway, "I just found out Sophia's tuition was paid today. Can you help me understand why hers was prioritized, when mine also has the same Friday deadline?" Mom set down her coffee mug with more force than necessary. "She asked first," she said flatly, not meeting my eyes. "Asked first," I repeated, confused. "I have been mentioning the deadline for weeks. I showed you the notices when they came in the mail." "Well, maybe you should have been more direct about it." The illogic of her response made my head spin. I had been direct. I had mentioned the deadline multiple times, had even left the payment notices on the kitchen counter where they could not be missed. Something was fundamentally wrong here, and I needed to understand what. I returned to my room and called the university's financial aid office, directly hoping to get clarity on our payment timeline. "Hello, this is Rosalie Martinez calling about my account," I said when the representative answered. "I wanted to confirm the deadline for spring semester tuition." "Let me pull up your account," the woman said kindly. "Okay, I see you here. Yes, the final deadline is Friday at midnight. After that, we will need to assess late fees and potentially place a hold on your account that could affect your class enrollment." My stomach dropped. "What happens if payment is not received by Friday?" "Well, you would be assessed a late fee of $300 initially, and if payment is not received within 10 business days after that, you could be dropped from your classes for the semester." Dropped from classes. The reality of my situation crashed over me like ice water. I thanked the representative and hung up, then immediately logged into my banking app to check if there was any way I could cover this myself. My part-time job at the campus bookstore and my small savings account held just over $1,200. Not even close to what I needed. I had to go back downstairs and demand a real conversation. This was not about being pushy or asking first. This was about my entire academic future. I found both parents still in their same positions, as if our earlier conversation had never happened. "We need to sit down and discuss this properly." I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to understand what the plan is for my tuition payment." Dad finally folded his newspaper and looked at me directly. For a moment I thought he might step in and clarify everything. Instead he said, "Your mother handles the education expenses. Whatever she decides is what we are doing." "Mom," I continued, "I need you to explain to me what is happening. Why was Sophia's tuition paid today while mine remains unpaid with 3 days left?" "Rosalie, I already told you we are handling it. I do not appreciate this interrogation in my own home." "It is not an interrogation. It is a conversation about my education. I have a right to know what is happening." "You have a right." Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the kitchen floor. "You live in our house, eat our food, drive a car we pay for, and use a phone we pay for. You do not have rights here beyond what we choose to give you." The harshness in her voice shocked me into silence. This was not the mother who had helped me with homework, who had attended my school events, who had told me she was proud of my grades. This felt like talking to a stranger who happened to look like my mom. But even in my confusion, I could not let this go. My future depended on getting answers. "I understand that you provide for me, and I am grateful," I said carefully. "But I am asking about something specific that affects my ability to continue school. Can you please just tell me when my tuition will be paid, when I decide to pay it? And when will that be? When I feel like it?" I stared at her, trying to understand how we had arrived at this point. Her answers were not answers at all. They were power plays, and I could not figure out what I had done to trigger them. It was then that I started remembering other things, details I had never connected before. Sophia's high school graduation party had been a catered affair in our backyard with 50 guests. Mine had been cake and ice cream with immediate family. When Sophia turned 18, she received a Honda Civic with only 30,000 miles on it. When I turned 18, I inherited Dad's old Toyota Corolla with 120,000 miles and a broken air conditioning system. Last summer's family vacation to Colorado was when I first noticed the pattern clearly. Sophia had been given her own hotel room while I was expected to sleep on the pull-out couch in my parents' room. When I asked about it, Mom said it was because Sophia was more sensitive to disruptions in her sleep schedule due to her demanding pre-med coursework. But now looking back, I wondered if sensitivity to sleep disruption was really the reason, or if the reason was something else entirely. Sophia has different needs than you do, Mom said that night when I questioned the room arrangements. Different needs. As if wanting privacy and basic respect were unusual requirements that only some daughters deserved. I decided to approach Sophia directly. Maybe she had some insight into what was happening or could help me understand our parents' behavior. I found her in her room, textbooks spread across her desk, looking the picture of academic dedication. "Hey," I said, knocking on her open door. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, what is up?" She looked up from her organic chemistry notes with a smile. "I am having some confusion about tuition payments. Mom and Dad paid yours today, but mine is still outstanding. Did they mention anything to you about timing or planning?" Sophia's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "Oh, that is weird. Maybe they just forgot about yours. You should probably just remind them again." "I have reminded them multiple times. They keep saying they are handling it, but the deadline is Friday." "Well, I am sure they will take care of it." Sophia's voice carried a tone I could not quite identify. "They always do right." Something about the way she said "always" bothered me. It implied a consistency I was not experiencing. And there was something else in her expression, a knowledge she was not sharing. "Sophia, has anyone said anything to you about priorities or decisions about who gets what?" "What do you mean?" But she was already looking back at her textbook, signaling the conversation was over. "Never mind," I said, but I did not miss the small smile that crossed her face as I left her room. Friday morning arrived with no resolution. I woke up knowing this was the day everything would either work out or fall apart. My tuition payment was due by midnight, and I still had no confirmation, no communication, nothing except the growing certainty that something terrible was happening. I found Mom in the kitchen making coffee, acting as if this were any ordinary day. "Today is the deadline," I said without preamble. "I need to know right now what the plan is." Mom did not even look up from pouring her coffee. "The plan is whatever I decide it is." "That is not an answer. I need my tuition paid today, or I will be dropped from classes." "Maybe you should have thought about that sooner." "Thought about what sooner? I have been bringing this up for weeks." Finally, she turned to face me, and what I saw in her expression chilled me. There was no warmth, no maternal concern, no indication that she cared about my distress at all. "Rosalie, let me be very clear with you about something. Your sister has a future. You are not worth it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward as if she had pushed me. "What did you just say?" "You heard me perfectly well. Your sister is going to be a doctor. She is going to make something of herself. You are just studying business. Anyone can do that. We are investing in the child who will actually make something of herself." I could not breathe properly. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too bright, too full of the smell of coffee that now made me nauseous. "You are saying you will not pay my tuition because you do not think I am worth investing in. I am saying we are making smart financial decisions about our family's future. I am part of this family. You are part of this family when you contribute something valuable to it." Just then, Sophia's phone lying on the counter where she had left it during breakfast lit up with a notification. The bright screen displayed a message clearly visible to all of us. "Full tuition payment confirmed, spring semester." Sophia walked into the kitchen at that exact moment, saw her phone, picked it up, and read the message. Then she looked directly at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was not sympathy or embarrassment at the timing. It was satisfaction. "Spending money on you would be a waste," Sophia said, her voice clear and deliberate. I looked between my mother and my sister, both of them watching me with expressions ranging from indifference to mild amusement at my shock. This was not a miscommunication or a temporary financial strain. This was a deliberate, calculated decision to fund one daughter's education while destroying the others. "You planned this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you." "We planned to invest our money wisely," Mom replied. "Sophia will graduate with honors and go to medical school. She will become a doctor and make us proud. You will graduate with mediocre grades and get some entry-level office job that anyone could do. Why would we spend the same amount of money on such different outcomes? How do you know what my outcomes will be? How can you decide what I am capable of before I have had the chance to show you? Because we know you," Sophia said, her voice matter of fact. "We have watched you your whole life. You are not special, Rosalie. You are not driven like I am. You do not have what it takes to excel." The finality in her voice, the casual cruelty of reducing my entire potential to nothing, broke something inside me that I did not know could break. I looked at my father, still silent in his chair, still hiding behind his newspaper, like this conversation was not happening. "Dad," I said, "are you going to say anything about this?" He lowered his paper slowly and looked at me with tired eyes. "Your mother makes the decisions about education. I support her choices. Even when her choice is to destroy one daughter's future, to secure the others, no one is destroying anything. You can take out student loans like plenty of other kids do. This is not the end of the world. But Sophia does not have to take out loans. Sophia is worth the investment." 3 times now, 3 people in my family had told me I was not worth investing in. The message was clear, repeated, and apparently unanimous. I stood there for another moment looking at these 3 people who shared my DNA, who had raised me, who had convinced me for 20 years that they loved me. Everything I thought I knew about my place in this family, about my value as their daughter and sister, crumbled around me. Without saying another word, I turned and walked upstairs to my room. I sat on my bed for exactly 10 minutes, letting the full reality settle over me. Then I got up, pulled out my largest suitcase, and began packing everything that truly belonged to me. Clothes I had bought with my own money from my bookstore job. Textbooks I had purchased myself. The laptop I had saved for and bought during my freshman year. Personal items, photos of friends, gifts from people who actually cared about me. Everything else in this room, everything they had purchased, I left behind. I could hear them downstairs, their voices carrying easily through the thin floors. Mom and Sophia were laughing about something, their conversation light and cheerful, as if nothing significant had happened. Dad had turned on the television. The sounds of my family continuing their day normally while I packed to leave forever felt surreal. I pulled out my phone and texted my roommate, "Coming back early, long story." Then I called my university's financial aid office once more. "This is Rosalie Martinez again. I called earlier about payment deadlines. I need to understand my options for emergency financial aid and student loans." "Of course, given the short timeline you would need to complete emergency paperwork today, but we do have provisions for students whose family circumstances change suddenly. Can you come in this afternoon?" "I will be there in 3 hours." I loaded my car with everything I could fit, which turned out to be most of what mattered to me anyway. As I carried the last box downstairs, Sophia appeared in the hallway. "Where are you going?" she asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly where I was going. "Back to school." "But do not you need to solve your tuition situation first?" I looked at her carefully. This sister I had grown up with, shared a bathroom with, fought with over television channels, and borrowed clothes from. I tried to find some trace of the person I thought she was, some hint of regret or sisterly concern. Instead, I saw someone who had just won a competition I had not realized we were having. "I will solve it myself," I told her. "Good luck with that." Mom appeared behind Sophia, watching me load my car through the window. "Running away will not solve your problems," she called out as I loaded the final box. I looked back at the house I had grown up in, at the 2 women standing in the doorway watching me leave. For 20 years, I had believed this was my home, my family, my safe place to return to whenever life got difficult. "You are right," I called back. "Running away will not solve my problems, but staying here will not solve them either. The difference is out there. I have a chance." I got in my car and drove away without looking back. The 3-hour drive to campus gave me time to think, to plan, and to grieve. I grieved for the family I thought I had, for the sister I thought loved me, for the parents I thought would always support me. But somewhere between Austin and my university town, the grief began transforming into something else: determination. I arrived on campus that afternoon and went straight to the financial aid office. The counselor I spoke with was kind and thorough, helping me fill out emergency hardship paperwork and apply for additional loans. The process would take a few days, but she assured me there were provisions to prevent students from being dropped for circumstances beyond their control. "What changed in your family situation?" she asked gently as we completed the forms. "I learned that my family's financial support was conditional on them believing I was worth investing in," I said. "And they decided I was not." She nodded knowingly. "Unfortunately, I see this more often than you might think. The good news is, you have options. It will be more challenging, but it is absolutely doable." Walking back to my dorm that evening, I felt something I had not expected: relief. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. No more wondering, no more hoping for different treatment, no more trying to understand why I felt like an outsider in my own family. The truth was harsh, but it was clear. My roommate was waiting with coffee and sympathy when I arrived. As I told her what had happened, I could see the shock and anger in her face. "That is absolutely horrible," she said. "But you know what you are going to show them: exactly how wrong they were about you." And that is exactly what I decided to do. I threw myself into my studies with a focus I had never experienced before. Without the distraction of trying to understand my family's mixed messages, without the emotional energy drain of seeking approval I would never receive, I could concentrate entirely on building my own future. I took on 2 additional part-time jobs to help cover my living expenses, but I did not let that affect my grades. If anything, having less free time made me more efficient with studying. I joined the Business Honor Society, started attending networking events, and began building relationships with professors who could provide mentorship and recommendations. By the end of that semester, my GPA had risen to a 3.8, the highest it had ever been. My business law professor approached me about a summer internship opportunity with a major corporation in Dallas, and my accounting professor recommended me for a competitive scholarship program. Junior year brought even more opportunities. The internship I had earned led to a second internship with increased responsibilities, and I began building a professional network that extended far beyond my university. I learned skills my business classes had not taught me: how to navigate office politics, how to present ideas to executives, how to build strategic partnerships. Most importantly, I learned that when no one is handing you opportunities, you become incredibly skilled at creating them yourself. Senior year arrived with multiple job offers and the recognition that I had somehow transformed from someone my own family considered worthless into someone multiple companies wanted to hire. My starting salary offer was more than my father's annual income, and my career trajectory looked nothing like the mediocre path my family had predicted. During this time, I heard occasional updates about Sophia through mutual friends from home. Medical school was not going as smoothly as she had anticipated. The competitive environment, the workload, and the pressure were taking their toll. Her grades were struggling, and she had called home several times in crisis, asking for additional financial support for tutoring and stress management resources. 2 years after graduation, I was promoted to regional manager at my company. My salary had doubled from my starting position, and I was managing a team of 15 people across 3 states. I had purchased my own home, a beautiful townhouse, in a neighborhood I had dreamed about during college, and I was building a life based entirely on my own choices and efforts. It was around this time that my phone began ringing with calls from my mother's number. I let them go to voicemail initially, not ready to engage with the people who had been so certain I would amount to nothing. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to one of the messages. "Rosalie, it is Mom. I have been thinking about our conversation before you left for school, and I think there may have been some misunderstandings. I would love to talk and clear the air. You have always been important to our family, and I hope we can reconnect." The message continued with similar sentiments, but what struck me most was what was missing: any acknowledgement of what had actually happened, any recognition of the specific things that had been said, any genuine apology for the deliberate cruelty. A few days later, Dad called and left his own message. His was shorter but similar in tone. "Rosalie, this is your father. Your mother and I have been talking, and we think it is time to put the past behind us and move forward as a family. We were wrong to let things get so heated before you left. We hope you can forgive us and come home for a visit soon." Wrong to let things get heated. As if the problem had been the emotional temperature of our conversation, not the fundamental rejection of my worth as their daughter. But the most telling contact came from Sophia. She sent a text message that read, "I heard about your promotion. That is really great. I could use some advice about career planning if you have time to talk." I read that message several times, marveling at its careful construction. No acknowledgement of her role in what had happened, no recognition that she had participated in defining me as worthless. Just a casual assumption that I would be available to provide support now that my success was undeniable. I spent several weeks thinking about how to respond to these attempts at reconciliation. Part of me wanted to ignore them entirely. Another part wanted to respond with anger to remind them exactly what they had said and done. But ultimately, I chose a different path. I called my mother and arranged to meet for coffee when I was in Austin on business the following month. She seemed delighted by my willingness to meet, and I could tell she interpreted my agreement as forgiveness and a return to the family fold. When we met, she spent the first 15 minutes talking about how proud she was of my success, how she had always known I would do well, how the family had missed me terribly. I let her talk, watching someone attempt to rewrite history in real time. "I appreciate you saying that," I said when she finished. "But I need you to understand something important. The success you are proud of exists because of what happened between us, not despite it. When you told me I was not worth investing in you, freed me from seeking your approval. When you chose to fund my sister's education while refusing to fund mine, you taught me that I could only rely on myself. Those were valuable lessons, even if they were not the lessons you intended to teach." Mom looked uncomfortable, and I could see her preparing to deflect or minimize what I was saying. "I am not angry anymore," I continued. "I am grateful. What you did forced me to discover capabilities I never would have found if you had continued supporting me. I learned that I am much stronger and more resourceful than any of us realized." "Well, I am glad it worked out," she said carefully. "It did work out. But I want to be clear about something. I am willing to have a cordial relationship with you and Dad and Sophia, but it will be limited. I will not pretend that what happened was a misunderstanding, or that family automatically creates obligations. You will be people I am pleasant to when our paths cross, but you will not be people I turn to for support, advice, or celebration." I could see the disappointment in her face, the realization that forgiveness would not mean a return to the relationship she had destroyed. "I think that is very sad," she said. "Family should mean more than that." "Family should mean more than that," I agreed. But the people who taught me that family was conditional on perceived worth, and that love could be withdrawn based on someone else's assessment of my potential, do not get to define family for me anymore. We finished our coffee politely, but I could tell she finally understood that the daughter who had left home in crisis was not the same person sitting across from her now. That daughter had needed their approval, their support, their validation. The woman I had become needed none of those things. Over the following months, I occasionally received updates on family events through mutual connections. Sophia eventually dropped out of medical school during her second year, unable to handle the pressure and competition. She moved back home and was working as a medical assistant while trying to decide on a new career path. Mom and Dad were disappointed but supportive, helping her financially while she figured out her next steps. I felt no satisfaction in hearing about Sophia's struggles. Her success or failure had no bearing on my own life. But I did find it interesting that the daughter they had been so certain would excel had faltered, while the daughter they had written off had thrived. The last time I spoke to any of them was at my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. We were polite, cordial, and careful with each other. They asked about my work and my life with the kind of interest you show acquaintances you want to stay on good terms with. I answered their questions pleasantly and asked appropriately about their own updates. At one point, Sophia asked if I ever thought about what would have happened if things had gone differently between us. No, I told her honestly. I think about what is happening now and what I want to happen next. The past was necessary to create the present, so I would not change it even if I could. Today I manage a regional division of a Fortune 500 company. I own my home, I have built meaningful friendships with people who value me for who I am, and I have created a life that reflects my own priorities and values. I learned that being underestimated can become your greatest advantage if you refuse to accept other people's limitations as your own. Sometimes people ask me if I ever feel sad about missing out on a close family relationship. The answer is no, because I never had a close family relationship to miss. What I had was an illusion of closeness that dissolved the moment it was tested. What I have now is something much more valuable, the knowledge that everything good in my life exists because I created it and no one can take it away from me. The greatest gift my family ever gave me was showing me exactly who they were when I needed them most. That clarity, painful as it was at the time, freed me to become exactly who I was meant to be. Have you ever had a moment when someone's low expectations of you became the motivation you needed to exceed even your own dreams? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences about overcoming family challenges and building your own path to success. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by other people's investment in them. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that sometimes being underestimated is the best thing that can happen to your future.